President of the Nigerian Bar Association, Maikyau, who is also a senior advocate of Nigeria, joins us now to make lucid some of the issues highlighted here in the news. Well, there is quite an interesting perspective because finally the political party, specifically the PDP, has said it will go to court. And the arguments are there. So it's the best time to speak about these before they become sub judice. Now, let us understand some of the key complaints that these people, because the bar also monitored the election. You were here before the big day. So let us in on what you were able to glean on Saturday.
Well, on Saturday, and thank you very much for having me, by the way. On Saturday, we monitored, or rather we observed the election across the country. We had our members, over 1,000 of them accredited by INEC, observed the election across the country. We also encouraged our members who went to vote themselves because they are leaders in their own rights. Whatever they observed at the polling units, we also asked them to send us reports to the Situation Room at the NBA House. And we had free toll lines and toll-free lines where we received those complaints, and also we had applications that accepted pictures that were uploaded and videos across the country. So the general complaint that we found was late arrival of materials to the polling stations, late arrival of polling officials. I also went round on that Saturday here in FCT. And as at 11 a.m. in certain polling units, in fact, we went to a certain rack here in Garki where they were supposed to be moving to their various polling units. And we still found some of them still waiting to go to their polling units at 11 a.m. Of course, there were also reports that polling materials did not arrive some local governments, particularly Warri South local government. It was the case the whole of that day. But what we did was to intervene in terms of speaking to INEC and letting them know that these were the things, the reports that we got from our observers across the country. And I must commend INEC. In those specific instances that I had cause to speak to them, the national commissioners, they acted swiftly and they intervened, and the things that were not in those polling units, they made them available. So, but of course, there were reports of infractions here and there across the country, which we also made known in our interim report that we gave. On that day, we had a pre-noon report, and subsequently, in the course of that day, we also reported on the basis of what our colleagues across the country reported. So, but we're here today with declarations of results, and we have a president-elect as declared by INEC, to whom a certificate of return was issued. And that's where we are today.
Great. I would like to get your reaction to the conference held by Peter Obi and Atiku. Both of them apparently are saying that they will go to court. What are your, what's your assessment generally of their position? And how to put it forward?
I am glad at what they said. That is the most civilized thing to do. As of today, a declaration has been made about who the president is on the basis of the process that INEC undertook on Saturday, the 25th of February 2023. And there is a presumption of law that endures for that process. Having so declared the results, there is a presumption, which is rebuttable though, that everything that needed to be done for that declaration to be made, that is to say, for Bola Ahmed Tinubu to be declared as president in the process of the election, had been so done. It's a presumption of law that goes in favor of that declaration that was made. But like I said, it's rebuttable. And that is where what Peter Obi said, what Atiku said, also become relevant. Because so what they are saying, in essence, is that they are going to take up the matter in court in order to rebut that presumption that endures to the results that has been declared by INEC.
But isn't it troubling where the judiciary, at the end of the day, has to be the final arbiter of the outcome of elections rather than the ballot box? What does that really mean for our democracy?
It's a misconception to think that the participation of the judiciary in the process of the election of our leaders, those that have expressed desire to be elected into any of the constitutional offices, that the involvement of the judiciary is outside of the process of election. It is not. The settlement of dispute, electoral dispute, is part of the election process. And it is only the courts or the tribunals, as the case may be, that have been constitutionally assigned that responsibility. So the process of election does not end at the polls and the declaration. In fact, taking disputes arising from that process to court is also part of the election process. So it doesn't end at the polls and with the declaration. So, so it's nothing of concern. It's a constitutional responsibility. Nobody is allowed by law to take an assessment of what has happened and make a conclusive remark or pass judgment on what has happened except the courts. So we do not have anywhere to go to as a civilized nation within the framework of our constitution other than to take every grievance to the tribunals and the courts.
But you agree that the judiciary will also be in the dock?
Well, I mean, as between, like someone said, an Indian judge at his valedictory, he said, whenever there is a dispute between parties, the parties before the court, they know the truth. It is only the judge that is on the trial. Of course, that a dispute like of this nature is taken to court like any other dispute.
Let me bring in something that should be of concern to you and the bar, and it has to do with, I mean, you interact with everyday Nigerian, and how do you feel, or how does the bar feel when you hear words like, oh, the courts won't get fairness or won't get judgment?
Yeah, I mean, it's a thing of concern because there must be confidence in the judicial process for the public to be able to accept the product of that judicial process. So I mean to say, if any dispute is taken to court, the process through which adjudication happens, you bring your complaint, you bring your response, the product must be acceptable to the public. And the only way they can accept that product is if they have confidence in the process. Yes, for so many things that have happened in this country, the public confidence in the judiciary has been eroded. But whether those things that have been said about the judiciary that has caused that lack of confidence in the judiciary are true is something that is also of a bigger concern, because the judiciary has been vilified, the judiciary has been bombarded with all sorts of, and I say this advisedly, spurious allegations without proof. And that is why my concern has always been that whenever there are cases of perceived compromise of the judiciary, you should be mindful of the things that you say. Because here we are all concerned about these allegations and counter-allegations about the process of the election. And the only place to go to constitutionally is to go to the court. And so whenever we speak in a manner that derogates, in a manner that desecrates that temple of justice, because you have perceived or suspected that some persons who are on that platform today have compromised without recourse to the impact of that your comment, then it becomes even worrisome, more worrisome than what we say. And I make this point because, like I would always say, whenever you take away the judiciary from the process, from this polity, and you only leave the executive and the judiciary, what will be left, and the legislature, what you'll be left with is chaos. Because whatever happens and whatever disputes that you have, the only resort that is available to you is self-help. If you have a dagger, you use it. If you have a Dane gun, you use it. So in this particular situation, the concern really is more about how we have we have abused, vilified the judiciary without any proof. There are maybe about 100 and maybe 1,000 or 1,005, let's assume we have 1,005 judges and justices in this country. How many of those ones have been convicted of any wrongdoing? And look at the percentage of those that have been found to have committed any wrong in the course of their responsibilities compared to the ones that have not. And is it fair to conclude that the judiciary of this country is corrupt? That is the bigger problem as far as I'm concerned.
It is, but you know what they say about perception is stronger than reality. And the question is, has the judiciary been able to beam the searchlight on itself so it can remove the bad eggs? Maybe you can respond to that. But back to the issue of the Electoral Act and how, in the eyes of many people, the INEC, the electoral umpires, seem to have, set aside the Electoral Act in the conduct of the election. The issue of uploading, results on the, on the PU. Ahmed Lawan, the president of the Senate, says there is no provision in the Electoral Act for the electronic transmission of results, but electoral transfer. Help us understand exactly what the Electoral Act says as far as that's concerned.
I would beg that you spare me rendering opinion. I'm a lawyer.
Okay.
But I am also the president of the bar. Anything I say here, I represent the position of the bar.
Right.
But all I would admonish, anyone who has any grievance, and I listened to what Ahmed said, he also concluded by saying that they are not a court. And it is only the court that can render a decision one way or the other. So parties have indicated a desire to submit their disputes to court, and I commend that rather than call your supporters on the street. Right. Go to court is the civilized thing to do. Bring your proof, demonstrate to the court that you actually won this election, and also take your case to the courts or to the tribunals to say that, it is transmission, it's a requirement. What did the electoral say? Or if it wasn't done by the presiding officer, what is the consequence? Does it vitiate the election?
We're not done. We're not done yet. We'll take a moment. Yes, I will come back. Still to come, more here on the news.
Welcome back, everyone. You're still watching News Night. A magistrate court in Kano has remanded House of Representatives Majority Leader Alhassan Ado Doguwa to prison custody pending his bail application. Doguwa is standing trial on several offences, including criminal conspiracy, culpable homicide, unlawful firearm possession, mischief, and public disturbance. He is remanded in custody until March 7 for the bail application hearing.
Another lawmaker in Kano, Aliyu Sani Madaki, has been invited by the police for questioning on suspected unlawful possession of a firearm. He is being investigated at the State Criminal Investigation Department, Kano State Police Command. Now, this was confirmed by the State Police Public Relations Officer Abdullahi Haruna Kiawa.
Well, Saturday's election saw pockets of violence in some states around the country. Well, the Nigeria Bar Association says it has constituted a legal team of over 300 lawyers to prosecute electoral offenders. Well, the NBA president is still very much with us, Yakubu Maikyau, senior advocate of Nigeria. Thank you so much for staying with us on Newsnight. Let's talk about the 300-man committee. That's quite a lot to address election offences.
It looks like a gift to the Nigeria.
Nation. Absolutely.
Yeah. Just take us back to just to provide a bit of context. We had a dialogue, a national dialogue, and that national dialogue was motivated by the understanding of who we are to the society. And one of the statements that actually motivated that dialogue was the statement by Sir Para Williams, who said, the legal practitioner, and I like quoting it because it reminds us of who we are. Once we come to the place of understanding our identity, then we'll begin to function in that understanding and we can bring value to the society. And he said that a legal practitioner lives for the direction of his people and for the advancement of the cause of his nation, of his country. There is no better place and in no better process would you show direction and also participate in the advancement of the cause of the nation than in the electoral process? It's the only means by which we can choose our leaders. And from that understanding, we know that we cannot continue to ask for fees to do our job. No. We cannot continue to ask for fees to do our job. The legal profession is one of the three original professions that fees were never paid. The clergy, the medical profession, and the legal profession. That's why it was preserved or reserved for the aristocrats, those who can afford it, people of means. The lawyer is primarily concerned about providing remedy whenever there is an injury. That's why if you watch our gown, there is a little pouch there, and you drop coins without even knowing who was dropping the coins. Right. You know, in your pouch, just in appreciation of their service. And you finished what you did because you found an injury somewhere and you knew that within the legal framework, remedy has to be provided. And it is you who is trained as a lawyer that has what it takes to do that. So we've decided to say that understanding our identity means that we have to speak for the people. And speaking for the people in the context of electoral offenses is to say that we abhor it, we condemn it. It is not something that is acceptable wherever there is an infraction of the law that constitutes an electoral offense. And that is provided in the Electoral Act, the nature of the conduct, how it is described as an offense, contained in the Electoral Act. Where such a conduct is found to be an electoral offense, we are prepared to support INEC.
And your observation team, talking about now you know what constitutes an electoral offense.
Yeah, they are all prescribed.
So in this last election, have you been able to compile some of these?
Yes.
And give us a sense of the numbers without being exact from
Right.
areas where you got some of those offenses.
Yes. So we had instances of ballot snatching. We had instances of where people just went into the polling unit area and destroyed the polling materials and all of that. And we also saw cases. I mean, the EFCC were able to also arrest persons who were collecting account numbers at polling units, to transfer monies to them. We found those reports. We found those reports. Wow. So these are infractions within the context of Part 7 of the Electoral Act, where electoral offenses were defined. So what can we do? Under, I think, Section 145, it says that INEC will prosecute those offenses, or it would give permission to legal practitioners. We've made this commitment to INEC. So for any of those offenses that have been found to have been committed, those that have been alleged to have committed those offenses, they would eventually be charged to court, will be involved. We are making our men available pro bono, understanding the fact that that is what we are primarily called to do, to serve the people. And we are going to do this prosecution pro bono of the cases of infractions that are filed in court.
Well, you call them infractions, and I'm thinking this allegation against a well-known lawmaker, how will you be dealing with such cases of murder, alleged murder, arson, public disturbance, firearm possession, and things like that?
In a single set of facts, you can have several offenses in them. So electoral offense would have been committed, and then if there is a unlawful taking of life, that is also culpable homicide in the North. Culpable homicide punishable with death. If it's a taking of life that was unintended, is one that is not punishable with death. Just the case, the same way you have murder and manslaughter in the southern part of the country. So these are all criminal offenses. So the Attorney General of the state has the power to deal with those issues of murder, of arson, and cases will be filed, charges will be filed, information will be filed against these individuals, stating the facts of what they have done and the punishment, and they will be arraigned in court. So the Attorney General of the state, if it's a state offense, or the Federation, as the case may be, would give fiat. We are prepared as a bar to also make our men available, and these are people that have experiences in prosecution, and we are also working with INEC to provide training for lawyers, because you can't have enough of that, you know, just to prepare the lawyers to do that. So these are cases that we are prepared to take on if we are given the opportunity to do so, but we are on standby to do them. And like I said, beyond just the electoral offenses, these are criminal offenses that the Attorney General...
And quickly here, looking at the numbers of electoral offenses or infractions, is it safe to say we're getting better?
Or worse?
Well, I think for many who even engaged in some of the actions that constitute electoral offenses, like ballot snatching, there is no longer an incentive to do that, because processes have been put in place in the extant Electoral Act that makes it senseless for anybody. There is no motivation. There is nothing you can achieve by snatching a ballot paper. There is nothing you can achieve by taking ballot papers to go and thumb print, because the process is that there is a BVAS for every polling unit. Before you are given a ballot paper, you would have been verified and confirmed to be the person who is on the register of voters in that polling unit.
Right.
And then you go to vote. So, I mean, there is no way you can have...
But quickly now, we also witness, we also witness overvoting. So that puts a big question mark on whether beavers was used.
Well, so I mean, there are instances where beavers, the use of beavers, the polling officials did not use beavers. So in that particular case, you are likely to find issues of overvoting. You know, find people who have voted over and above the number of...
But would you say, before we let you go, would you say it's an incentive to those who want to violate the electoral process that in many cases, prosecution, you know, a successful prosecution of these criminals, you know, is hardly put out there? Is that a challenge as far as that's concerned?
You know, we wouldn't call them criminals. You call them criminals only after they are convicted. Offenders, if you like, yeah. So it takes a lot to prosecute. And there are several processes. The investigation. Do you have the evidence? Someone may have done something. You may have witnessed what that person did at the point in the polling unit. But whether the evidence necessary for the successful prosecution of that person have been collated, and even after that, the presentation of the evidence too before the court is something that accounts for the success or otherwise of the prosecution. So there are a lot of factors that you have to consider. In many cases, it's not because either INEC or the prosecuting authorities are not interested in prosecuting, and that is why you don't have success. But there are quite a lot of factors you have to take into consideration between the point of the commission of the offense, prosecution, and the eventual conviction or discharge of the person who is alleged to have committed that offense. So we have to have a combination of all these factors in place, proper investigation, collation of evidence, understanding the law and what you need to do to successfully prosecute, present the evidence before the court, the right knowledge of the court.
You have your job cut out for you and your team. We would like to thank you for your time, as well as the other 300 who have ensured to do this pro bono for Nigerians. Maikyau, President, Nigerian Bar Association.
Thank you very much. I just want to admonish Nigerians that we need to continue to put our confidence in the judiciary, because that is the only arm of government that can sustain this country for us to continue to have our aspirations expressed.
Very reassuring. Thank you so much for putting that out there.